I'm Jordan.
I'm Sheridan.
And together we're Sippin on Spice podcast.
And once a week, Jordan and I get together and we talk about a book that we've recently read, or we just talk about all kinds of like bookish content and topics. This week, we're going to be doing a fantasy romance episode. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, and we're going to keep it all spoiler free. So just talking about things we recently read and just fantasy bookish topics. So as you know, I had been on a fantasy slump. It's been a long time since I have been like picking up fantasy. And I am happy to say that that has changed. So I am on a fantasy kick right now. The big slump buster for me was actually Shield of Sparrows.
I'm currently reading it and I'm really hooked. So I'm glad it brought you back to the fantasy romance side.
Because I did read Hunted Error and I liked it. What I like about those, and I think it kind of like greased the wheels to get me ready for Shield of Sparrows, because they were all like 200-300 pages. Like they were BBs, like little babies to wrap it up. And you know what? I respect when an author knows how many pages they have. You know what I mean?
True.
Like it didn't need to be any longer. She nailed it. The pacing was fine. I was fine with it. I don't think it needed 200-400 page installments.
No, I agree. I think she did a really good job of those books, and I like how the story flows. Shield of Sparrows, I cannot wait to talk to you about it. I have like many theories at this point. I'm like 60% of the way done. So I really want to discuss when done.
It is like the BookTok sensation right now. So I picked it up because like I said, I started with these babies. Shield of Sparrows is bigger. I think it's like 600 pages, right?
I think so.
Something like that. It's hard to say because a lot of times like I read on Kindle, so sometimes they change like the page count, I think. So to me it was 600 pages. So I appreciate Veiled Kingdom for greasing the wheels to get back in there, but I could not put it down. It felt like such, and I think we can talk about this part because again, no spoilers, and also I'm not gonna. You're halfway through your journey,
right?
I thought it was such a breath of fresh air in the fantasy space in a way that the world and the mysteries per se, I don't want to say like, because there's a lot of plot twists, which isn't like, I think some of them are predictable, some of them aren't. But from what I mean is it just felt like a different world. I felt like it didn't feel like a copy paste of something. It didn't feel like I've seen this film before.
Yeah, I would agree. From where I'm at right now, it is its own unique. And I'm so, that when you said plot twist, I'm like, oh, okay, there's a few that I think are coming. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'm really curious to see what those are. But yeah, I would say it's really unique. I really think, I don't want to spoil anything, but I think we could say this. I think that the female main character's journey, at least to where I'm at, is unique in her journey. I think normally we expect certain things to happen or her personality, so to speak, to develop in a certain way. And we haven't seen that yet. So I do like how you described it, breath of fresh air. I think it's really, really good.
Yeah, I agree on the FMC. There's a couple things that could have happened that, or at least internal thought tracks, let me word it that way, that could have been cookie cutter. Again, it could have been, she's just like every other fantasy girl. You know what I mean? Because I feel like you get polarizing opposites in the fantasy female main character spectrum. It's either like damsel in distress, or it's like Aelin Galathinius, bad, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What I liked about her is it feels like she's going on a very realistic journey. And it also feels like we're not playing into the same hand of tropes in your head. Like number one, I'm thinking is like, usually when you take like a FMC and you place her from one kingdom or whatever to another, her loyalty always stays with like the people it shouldn't stay with for a very long time. And she'll blindly be like, I am allegiant to these peoples for no reason. And you're like, shouldn't you ask some questions? Like, don't you have some follow-ups? And then at the end, it's like this big reveal, like, wow, I didn't see what was in front of me this whole time. I felt like she questioned both sides. I loved that because it's like, it's fine if you don't know right away who is right and who is wrong, or like who to trust. That's a reasonable person's thoughts. You know what I mean? You've been through a lot. Take some time to analyze your surroundings. That's okay.
It is. And I also think, at least from where I'm at, I would agree with that. It's very interesting I don't think this is a spoiler. There are parts with her internal thought tracks that really represent anxiety, like multiple times.
Yeah.
And I thought that that's cool to see that represented because we both are little water cucumbers with anxiety. So I think.
What does that even mean, water cucumbers?
Because we're just mainly water. Like humans are just mainly water.
Oh.
So we're like, and cucumbers are mainly water.
Interesting. I prefer to be celery.
Okay, you can be celery. Cucumbers are better, but you can be celery.
Yeah, right. Okay, if you sit down and have a snack, real talk, you sit down and have a snack
Cucumber.
and you would slice up a cucumber. I'm talking raw dog. You don't get any dippers.
No, I love the taste of just cucumber. Like it doesn't need to have anything on it. It can, and it would not.
And you would just snack on it over a celery?
Yeah. Oh yeah, celery is disgusting.
What?
The only good thing
celery is water.
But
it doesn't
has
taste
a really
like
bitter taste. No, it has that bitter taste. It does. Cucumbers don't have a taste.
Cucumbers have a taste. That's why they put it in water.
It's good.
That's why you don't have. That's why you don't have celery water. The cucumber.
The only good thing about celery is when it has peanut butter on it, and you just eat the peanut butter. That's it.
Are you one of those creepy people who like raisins on it too, like ants on a log?
No, I don't like raisins in general.
I don't either.
You?
No.
I like cranberry raisins, like craisins, but
my husband actually makes fun of me because like if we get trail mix, I eat around the raisins and he calls me a child because he'll like get to the bottom of it. It's just like a raisin bag. I'm like, oh, I want nothing to do with that.
Same. Grapes, 10 out of 10. But when you make it a raisin, it's different.
Yeah.
They
and
taste
you know
different.
what? And grapes in all forms, right? Wine, excellent.
Yeah.
Like fantastic. The only form that sucks is raisin.
So true. Dried cranberry is fantastic. But anyways, back to anxiety in books. Water cucumbers. Anxiety. I liked that representation of thoughts, of anxious thoughts.
Yeah, like I said, I just felt like she was the kind of FMC that like it's easy to put yourself in her shoes because she was relatable. She wasn't gung-ho one way or another. She wasn't some crazy like either naive or inherent like badass who's been training her whole life. Like she was just very relatable of like someone who could exist. And I really enjoyed that. It made it fresh.
I agree. I'm very intrigued to see where
I'm so excited for you to finish it. This was a 5-star for me. So I can't wait.
Okay. I'm excited. I cannot wait to discuss.
So I started a new fantasy series. New to me, not to the rest of the world, though. It's a completed series. It surprisingly has like a 4-star consistent rating on Kindle and Goodreads. But if you go in the like book influencer space, everybody's always like chatting it up like it's the greatest thing. So I was like, I'm going to give this a try.
Yeah.
Book 1, and this kind of draws me into a topic I want to talk about, was kind of hard on me. And we've talked about this before about how like dark tends to be hard for us because a lot of times they lean into like things like that. And that's something that you and I tend to have like a true trigger warning on where we say like, yeah, this is just something I can't read. Again, no dislike no like judgment if you can, but for me, that gives me like scary, the creepy crawlies, you know what I mean? Like, and I can't get past it. Like I'll keep thinking about it. So I tend to shy away from those. I started a book where it's not on page, but it's talked about in the past. And I really struggled with book 1 because it just made me feel icky throughout the whole thing, where I just felt like, is it going to get darker? Like, is like knowing she'd been through this, like I had a really hard time moving past it. So I wonder if you feel the same way. Like, even if it's off page, is it sometimes harder for you to decide if you're going to stick with it because it just gives you this heavy, like icky feels wrong because it's not like her fault. Like I don't mean it like that. Right. It just like, I feel anxious. I feel like heavy about it.
Yeah, no, I can totally see what you're saying. I think so too. Shockingly, similar to what you're describing, I can think of 2 recent books that I've started where it's on page. And one of them, it's right off the bat. It's like first chapter. So it's like those.
What one's right off the bat? Because that's not a spoiler.
Yeah, right off the bat, it opens with it, Fairytale.
Oh, and that's a huge one I see recommended all the time. And it's on page?
Trigger warnings, it's on page. But I don't want to spoil it, but it is trigger warning for
Yeah.
With those books, I decided not to continue reading them.
Yeah.
Just because, again, and actually as a learning lesson, I need to actually read trigger warnings because I don't
Yeah.
always actually read them. And I should. They put them there for a reason.
I started to with fantasy because fantasy I feel like is really towing the line lately. Like it's really running up against like dark fantasy versus fantasy. I think you really do have to stop and check now.
I agree. So yeah, I do think it overall can set the tone of the book, and it can be like something that they refer back to. So I think it just depends on how it's done, whether it's triggering or not. Like, because there's another series that I can think of, Shadow and the Ember. It's a theme throughout all the books, more or less, but it's done in a way where I was able to continue reading. But when that is a reoccurring theme, or if that's a theme that's been happening, it is a darker read. And so it does set like a specific tone. So I think we have to be in the mental health space where we can read that. You know what I mean?
I agree with that. And I think it's also like, it's hard too because I don't like to write it off either, because a lot of times something like, for example, that Throne of Glass does really well in my opinion, and even Zodiac Academy, is they toe this line of and so they create a fear around these things. And so it's like, while you might not necessarily want to read it and it might be heavy for you, it's also like if you were in war and this was real, that would be a concern. That would be
it would be
if you were in these situations, this would be an on the table concern. And so it makes you a little bit more invested in that fantasy in a way that, like, for example, ACOTAR, right? ACOTAR is, I wouldn't say a bubblegum fantasy, but it's more romantasy than it is fantasy. So you don't
I can see
live in fear.
No.
You get anxious about things and big things happen, but you don't live in fear. Whereas like in Zodiac Academy and some of these other ones, like Shadow and the Ember, you do live in a fear space for a while.
I would agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. And I think so, again, mental health space to be able to go into that. And it is fantasy. Like, wars are happening. Things are happening. There are strong plot points. So I think you're right. It's an on the table concern for sure. Yeah. And it just depends, I think, truly for like us, or everyone has their own trigger warnings and kind of what they're comfortable with reading. But you continued the series. Like, you did move past book one.
So this book, I don't think it's a spoiler because, again, it alludes to the past. It's in the beginning. She talks about it. It is not on page. It is Trial of the Sun Queen. I'm on book 3. I will say it's feeling like a solid 3 to me in that realm, 3 to 3.5. I really actually think the story is good. What is happening, again, I don't want to say too much. I just find that the dialogue sometimes drifts in a way that kind of pulls me out of it. But other than that, I'm actually enjoying like the plot of it.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I am glad I hung in there because book 1 was really hard for me. You pick it up in the heaviest space. So you're like,
oh, got it. Okay.
So you're sitting there and you're like, I'm just getting beaten when I'm down, man. Like, just pick me up.
Dark. It starts off dark.
And like things happen and I'm not trusting anybody. So the whole time I'm like, I just need like somebody give me like a little breath of hope.
Did you get the breath of hope? No spoiler, but did you get it?
Here's the thing. I feel like we went from no hope and no trust to everybody gets a little trust. You get some trust. You get some trust. And now I'm like, we're giving out trust too freely.
Wow.
Now you're gonna goof. Extremes. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There was like some things in the dialogue, some things that happened that I feel like, okay, we can't go from here to here. We can't snap me.
Right. Would you say there was a new hope? There was no hope, and then there was a new hope.
Is that a Star Wars joke? Is that what you're making?
I love to make these jokes to you. I'm sorry.
My husband would literally, if he heard some of these.
You gotta tell him.
We play a game together, and right now it's like got a Star Wars
cool.
season theme, and like there's like the different spaceships in it, and like different characters, and I'll like say something every now and then. He'll be like, Jordan, what did you just say? Or if I get it right, he'll be really proud of me.
Well, now now you have more exposure to it through the game. So now you should get these references.
You would think I would like it. You know what I mean? Like how much fantasy that we read. I've seen them all.
Oh,
you think I've made it this far in this marriage and haven't seen them all?
I don't know.
I have seen them all.
You put up such a fight about Lord of the Rings and the Hobbits. Well, you like the Hobbits because you like the ones that are worse, but yeah.
I like the Hobbits. Yeah, it doesn't matter. This doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But yes. And this takes me into another thought, right? Which is something you said. Something else that's interesting, especially when you deal with fantasy and phase specifically, is how different their is versus like any other. They tend to be very like laissez-faire about everything, which I'm sure like you live for a million years.
Right.
Suck it.
Gotta spice it up somehow. Yeah.
Whoever.
Gotta be trying new things.
Yeah. So for lack of a better way to put it, one of my notes I put was the phase and the gaze, because it's something I love about like when you read phase is they usually like are very like fluid without anybody talking about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like sometimes they're even dabbling in both. Like they're just very like laissez-faire about in general. And I just thought that was interesting from like a cultural standpoint. Like, because when you read fae fantasy, you could like, and something like that happens, you're like, yeah. Whereas whereas like if somebody says they're gay and contemporary, you're like, oh, is everybody cool with that? Like, is this going to be a topic? Whereas like when it's phase, you're like, yeah. It's kind of
everyone's
anyone.
Like, yeah,
I've literally, the one I'm reading now, the guy was talking about getting walked in on by his lover, sleeping with his male lover, sleeping with his sister, and he got mad about it. And I was like,
I mean, I would be mad about it too.
Yeah, I mean, you would, but that's what I mean. Like, it's just like it's not like shocking. It's just like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Like, don't do that. That wasn't cool. But by the way, it's fine. But like, hey, not my sister.
Well, and in a lot of times, like, they're not really that faithful. They're not really that, like, it's just, again, not that big of a deal. Like, unless you get into, like, the mate territory, they're all very, like, yeah, whatever.
Okay. This is actually a great question. So speaking of the phase, if you lived for millennia, do you think that you would get to a point, because I kind of put vampires in this bucket as well. If you lived for millennia, would you just cease to care because it had been a millennia? Like it had been 1,000 years you had been with this person. So at that point, my capacity to feel jealousy is so evolved at this point.
I think this would be hard because I think it would be different if you're like a transition, like a human to a vampire, a human to a fae, right?
True.
Because even ACOTAR talks about this, like a lot of books talk about this when this happens, which is that you keep your quote unquote human heart, right? We were raised and culturally, right, nature versus nurtured, to believe and feel that I feel like kind of make or break you. So it's hard to say over time. Maybe it would dull, but I think I would still have those inherent, like what I'd believe to be right and wrong based on how I was nurtured, raised, etc. Now, if I was born fae or something, I think that the nurture of it might be different.
You would just it wouldn't be anything different. It just is expected.
Yeah. You'd like to think you found your mate. So it's like if it was your mate, they have like the whole territorial, like there is no sharing is caring in there because it's from blood and ash.
Okay. Don't get me started. Do not get me started. So something that I wanted to discuss is I actually think, because we talk about this often, in contemporary, you need dual POV. Like it's very important sometimes depending on how it's written. In fantasy, I almost like it better when it's single POV from the female main character's perspective, because the pining and the yearning and the banter, because fantasy romances, they almost always have this like dynamic of animosity to angst, you know? And it's so much more built up for the payoff when we don't know the other person's point of view, I think.
Yeah, and I like when they do it a lot of times, like they'll do it where like they start off that way and then like maybe book 2 or 3, once you kind of lock down your mate situation or whatever, you'll get the dual POV and you're like, perfect, that was the right timing, right? Because then a lot of times they use it to tell like dual storylines, right? They separate, they're running different gambits, so to speak. But I agree, because the book that I'm on immediately starts with 2 POVs. So you're like, you already know who the MMC is. So then you go through this whole book 1 and you're like, you're not my MMC and I know it. Get out of here.
Yeah. fantasy needs the one, I think, for the build up, like to your point. The only time I can think of it successfully done where it's dual POV or multiple is Throne of Glass. Because once I start to get the other, because you never, like in ACOTAR, I don't think you read from Reese's point of view, do you? I mean, it's been a while since I've read it. I don't think so.
No.
I think it's always Farah until you get obviously Silver Flames. I think Throne of Glass is the only time it's done it where I didn't lose interest because it's the build
Zodiac
up
Academy.
And then the payoff. Well, you know how I feel about those books.
I mean, like if you take your saltiness out of it, the point of views are necessary.
True. So it's kind of like Throne of Glass, but but it's very different because the relationships, the romances are will they, won't they for a very long time. So it's fine. It's like, it's different. I get bored, for lack of a better word, when it's dual POV and you know that they're together already. Other than Throne of Glass. Throne of Glass.
I get that. I think it's kind of the challenge that I've been talking about, which is I just feel like sometimes the dialogue too gets corny and you're like, it's not this big romantic payoff for me. It's like, it gives me like the slight ick where I'm like,
How it's done is important. And it's all about the angst and the buildup, the payoff.
It is. So while we're talking about fantasy, while we're here,
you're like, wow, yeah.
Something I love about fantasy, specifically magic fantasy, and is they always have like some sort of magic entanglement while they have moments.
Yeah.
And sometimes even like the magic plays together before they play together. Why is that so hot? Like really it means nothing. It literally translates to nothing in your personal life.
But I think it's like, okay, I actually have like a thought, but we're gonna get deep. We're gonna get real. We're gonna get spicy. Let's get deep. Let's get deep.
Let's get in there.
The deep. So
get deep with fantasies. Shadows. I'm not done. We're getting deep with fantasy. We were talking about fantasy sex and how you can't technically relate to it,
but you can, I suppose.
Yeah, but it's hot.
We're gonna get wild. It is hot. It's so hot. So it's specifically shadow daddies, right? So shadow daddies, the shadows come into play. There's lots of shadow work. Like
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, right. Because then it's like it would be like that person that you're with has multiple hands. Yeah. So they could be doing more than just what two hands can do.
It would be like the fun of a throuple without the mindset of a throuple.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I
totally get that.
Yes.
But I even mean like when they talk about like their magic touches each other inside. I don't even know how to say this. But you know what I'm talking about? Like when they're like, they feel their magic and their magic merges sort of thing. Like they do it a lot in Zodiac Academy. There's a little bit of it in like the bonding ceremonies in ACOTAR where you're just like, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm here for this.
And it's like, again, you could not translate that to something. You can't be like, I know how that would feel. Like in the way that you could say like the shadow hands, right?
Yeah.
But you know.
You do know. What if you just had like insanely emotional connecting? And so then you just felt like you just, but like that is possible. Locked eyes.
It's not the same.
Intense. It could be. You could feel this.
You have to feel it like, inside you.
You do.
Do you ever see Forgetting Sarah Marshall?
Yeah.
Inside you. How I long to be.
You're so squirrely today.
It'll either go great or bad.
It's amazing. It's hilarious. We have also, our songs have made, so we got Forgiveness.
There was one right before Forgiveness. You've teed me up for a lot of songs. Anyways. Okay. Another thought I've been having. Okay. And I want your thoughts on this. And I think that me saying this comes from a place of privilege. Okay. I want to put that caveat on it, that I come from a place of privilege, that this, the suspension of disbelief allows me to feel this way. Okay. And it's fantasy books and the FMC's first, and they're always all, it's like they always like somebody who needed to You know what I mean? It's always
right.
like they get attacked by somebody who's evil and they had to kill them. And then I got to suffer through like 5 chapters of you coming to terms with this because now you've got blood on your hands. You know what I mean? And again, comes from a place of privilege. But like,
clear for those watching it, Jordan and I have not committed murder, so we don't.
No.
So we haven't done it.
No,
so, yeah.
these hands are clean.
Exactly.
I don't look in the mirror and keep washing blood off. You know what I mean? For weeks at a time. So
that does always happen. That is always
Yes.
what they do.
Every single fantasy book, and I like, again, from a place of privilege, but I want one of them to be like, that needed to die. So
that would be really interesting if it was written that way. I think it's a larger conversation about how women are displayed in books, like in novels and just in media. I feel like, because this also always happens in conjunction with this, it's something that always bothers me. If a guy were to do that, if an MMC were to do that, it's handled differently. Like they're already almost always trained. They got lots of it's already in the past. So I think it's how they have to be displayed on their journey. Like I think that it has to be like, not that there has to be, but I think that for some reason there's this expectation that it has to be. Another thing that really
like a
always
softening
bothers me. Exactly. Their character always has to be softened. Another thing, because I think this is like, this really grinds my gears. This gets me going. Why does the FMC, when she falls in love and she gets her happily ever after, it is so common, not always, but it's common, she loses her powers. She has to sacrifice something to get this happily ever after.
Yeah.
And what type of message is that telling women? Like, you have to sacrifice this to get your happily ever after.
I agree. I think I can think of like a couple times that's happened, and I was like, that's fun.
It is.
Especially after everything you went through, you should be able to be like playing magical pony out there. I don't know what that means, but you should be sending your magic into the abyss like it's nothing. I agree wholeheartedly.
I agree,
Fight entire castles.
Exactly. It's not all the time, but it's common.
No. Yeah.
It's more than once.
And they never lose their powers.
No. Exactly. Is there ever been an MMC? I'm trying to scan all the books. That's like, oh, I had to give up my power.
Mental
to be with
scan.
You.
Proceed.
I thought of one. I thought of one. One time.
Yeah.
But other than that, can't think of it.
Anyways, I just think they should feel better about their.
Yeah. But imagine, would you read the book but I think we would. I think we would read the book. Like, she just, day one, out there, no F's given. You know,
I think if it's actually like her enemies, if it's actually somebody attacking you, don't send me through. Like, I don't want the 5-chapter.
Right.
Doesn't matter at what page it happens. I just want you to be like, yeah, he came at me. I could even see if they have like the nightmares of them attacking. Like, and because sometimes that's like a trope where they talk about like, it's always like a significant other trope. You know what I mean? Where they're like, do you remember your first? And he's like, it lives with you forever. I too wake up. That's fine.
I can think of one character who's an FMC who doesn't do it. And she's like, yeah, I got to do this. So I did it.
All right. Well, that was fantastical.
Would you say it was magical? Would you say it was magically?
I would say, would you say that it was titillating?
I would.
Did you feel it in your chesticles?
So many pickup lines.
It's getting spicy here. All right. Well, that was fantastical of us. You heard it here first through the grapevine. If you like what you heard, you can find us at TikTok and Instagram at Sippin on Spice.
Yes, and we also have a YouTube channel where we release episodes as well as just different videos on bookish content. So please check us out on YouTube and like and subscribe.
Cheers!
Cheers!